Okay, so how this will work is probably we'll have like 20 minutes of like planned questions, and then we'll go into Q&A. So do you guys want to first introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Gopi. I did my undergrad and my master's degree at UCLA through the ESAP program. And let's see, I graduated from my master's degree last quarter, so like this winter. And I am going to start working at like a backup company called Rubrik in a couple of weeks.
All right, I'll go. Hi, everybody. I'm Travis. I'm a second year master's student at UCLA. I did my undergraduate at Claremont McKenna College, but I guess unlike most graduate students, I didn't study computer science or anything really related to it. I was a biochemistry and econ major, and then I did research for a couple of years in cancer immunotherapy at City of Hope, and then eventually decided to make the switch and come to UCLA to pursue a graduate degree in computer science.
Hi, I'm Akul. I'm a PhD student at UIUC. For those of you guys who don't know the acronym, it's University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. This is my first year as a PhD student. I did my undergraduate at UC Santa Cruz, so up in California. And my research topic for my PhD program right now is in adversarial machine learning and graph algorithms.
That's really cool. Also, I forgot to mention that if you guys ever have any questions, feel free to like message in the chat or like raise your hand and we'll answer them. So can you tell us why you guys decided on grad school?
I guess I can go first. So I decided on grad school, and I guess a PhD particularly, partly because of what I did as an undergrad. So I was heavily involved in research my sophomore and junior year of college, where I was participating in two different labs, one in security and one in graph algorithms, or graph theory, I should say. And both labs, it was, to me, researching was a lot more fun. I had a couple of internships before that, and to me, research was a lot more interesting and a lot more freeing than what I was doing as an intern. So I kind of wanted to go and do a PhD as a result. And being part of a grad program so far has been pretty fulfilling. So it's not a decision I regret, but I think it's something that, everyone has to really realize they want it before they can start going out to do it. At least from a PhD perspective. Masters might be a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about why I decided to do a master's degree. So I guess like a large part of it was that I finished all of my classes at UCLA pretty early. So like by the end of my third year, I didn't have that many classes left to graduate, right? So what happened was that I was doing an internship at Facebook then, and the team that I was put on was stream processing. And I felt like when I was doing work at Facebook, I didn't really know a lot of the stuff that my team was doing because, like extreme processing isn't something that like they cover in like your regular undergrad classes, right? So I was sort of interested to like learn more about systems and stuff. So that was part of the reason why I decided to go to grad school. And I guess like the less like legit reason was that I wanted to be in college for 4 years. So I decided to do my master's.
Just wondering, how long did everything take then?
Like 12 quarters. Yeah, like so it's like for more context, the ESAP program at UCLA is not that like rigorous, right? So for your master's degree at UCLA, all you have to do is take so there are two paths. You can either do a capstone project or you can do a thesis, right? And if you do a capstone, then that means that you take 9 classes and you like do a project and then you're done. And if you do a thesis, that means that you take 7 classes and then you do like 2 quarters of research and like you write a paper or something and then you're done. So like most people I think finish in like 3 to 4 quarters. So like it's not that bad.
Okay. So for me, going to grad school, I guess was always something I had planned on doing, except I thought it would be a PhD in immunology and not in computer science, because I guess and a big reason for that is I guess in biology it's hard to find like a really good job unless you have like a lot of like research experience, like specifically a PhD. Like a master's doesn't seem to like get that much. Um, so yeah, so I was working in the lab during gap year, and pretty much my PI was just like, hey, you're the youngest guy here, so you'll probably figure out this computer code stuff better than everybody else, because he needed someone to write scripts to do image processing and stuff. So I just started teaching myself to code in like R and Python, and eventually I was just like, I guess if I'm going to be doing this a lot, I might as well learn to do it for real. And so I decided to apply to grad school. I did consider getting like a second like bachelor's degree, but there's not like a lot of schools that really allow you to reapply for a bachelor's once you have it. And I specifically went for a master's over a PhD. I did get into one PhD program at Northwestern, but I decided to go for a master's because I didn't have that much background in computer science. So I figured having to deal with like qualifying exams and like having to do research right off the bat was probably a little bit too much to ask for right away. And I just wanted to focus on classes and learning the material first before moving on to other stuff if I chose to.
So would you consider doing a PhD after then?
I am considering it. I haven't gotten as involved in research as I would like, so I would, in I guess the remaining time I have in my master's program, I want to spend more time doing the research, and then if I maybe find a lab, then I would try to continue on as a PhD. UCLA does have like a form that you can fill out as a master's student where I think if you do a thesis defense and you're basically, it's like if your committee signs off on it, they'll let you continue on into the PhD program. So that's the path that I would be referring to there.
So I think a lot of you answered this question already, but why did you choose to do like an MS over a PhD or vice versa?
I can talk about this for a bit. Oh, sure. You can go ahead.
You should go.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So basically, I did a lot of research. My first or I guess like starting from freshman year up until like a quarter or two before I was going to graduate in my undergrad, and I was doing research in this robotics lab, and like honestly, like if you like doing a PhD is basically doing research, right? So I feel like if you are going to do a PhD, you should definitely get some experience doing research during your undergrad. And if you like what if you like the lifestyle of doing research, and like if you like what you're doing, and if you like like reading papers, like learning more and like discovering new things, then a PhD might be for you. But like that, but I did not have a great time doing research in my undergrad, so I decided to not do a PhD.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I obviously was the opposite, where I was part of a couple labs, and I actually enjoyed that entire process of, pulling consecutive all-nighters, writing a paper before the deadline, trying to get experiments running, trying to get the code running. So for me, that it's exciting. Like what I'm doing is exciting. I didn't see the same excitement when I'm working, as an intern. Obviously, I've never worked at a computer or at a company because I went straight from undergraduate to a PhD program. So I can't say, everyone who's going to be working will be like this. But from an intern perspective at big companies, I didn't see that. I didn't have that same experience where, I was staying up late night, excited about what I was doing. It was something where I was implementing some kind of tool for the company, or I was, building some kind of model, or, digesting some data. It was very cookie cutter, and it was interesting in its own way because you got to decide what kind of stuff you wanted to do with it. I mean, the company gave you a problem and you kind of decide what you wanted to do with it, but it still was, you know, the solutions you're coming up with weren't like unique or special. It was very set. And with research, first of all, the problem isn't set. The problem is, you know, something you to come up with yourself, but also the solution is something that isn't standard. It's not something you can find online. The solution is something you have to also come up with yourself. And that problem, that process of discovery in research was something that I found very, very exciting. And the great part about a lot of the PhD programs that you will, if you guys end up doing a PhD, is they actually allow for you to drop out with a master's. And I think that is also an interesting route people can take, where they can start with a PhD program, and if they really don't like what they're doing, then you can end with a master's. But I definitely agree in that you should, if you're doing a PhD, you should really, you know, try to understand if you like research, because a PhD is all about research, and it's all about that discovery and about, you know, the excitement around it. If you don't feel that excitement, you know, maybe a PhD is not for you. Um, yeah, that's my 2 cents. I mean, I actually did do a master's, but I moved on with a PhD afterwards.
Okay, I guess I'll elaborate on what I said previously. So I always knew that I wanted to go into research, but I was looking at it from like I said, I was an undergrad studying like biochem, and I thought I wanted to do immunology research. So I agree with the other panelists here that if you want to do a PhD, you definitely have to know that you want to go into research, because there's a lot of, in research it's like there's a lot of like, you know, not so fun days, along with like the fun of like, you know, learning new things. Like it's a grind. It really is. So you have to have that passion, or you're just not going to make it. And also the other thing with for me when I considered PhD was just like, I guess economic trade-off. Like a PhD is going to last you maybe like 5-6 years, and I guess in computer science it's a lot bigger trade-off in terms of salary, like from what you can make like out in industry. Like if you look at the opportunity cost of having to take 6 years at I don't know what the stipend is at UCLA, but it averages maybe 35,000 compared to what you can make in industry. In biology, there's not really much of a path forward unless you go to medical school, or you get, like I said, you get a graduate degree. So that's not really a question. But with computer science, it's a lot easier to make that, to look at an economic trade-off, like a master's degree in like 4 quarters and versus, you know, 6 years of your life.
That makes sense. Also, what do you guys talk about in your personal statement then?
I can start off with this one. So by personal statement, I mean, so a lot of schools have, well, not a lot of schools, but there are 2 different, I think, essays you have to write. There's a personal statement, and then there's a statement of purpose. I'm going to assume generally the statement of purpose, personal statements may or may not be required in some universities, but always a statement of purpose is, I believe. From what I recall with the statement of purpose, when you're writing that document, it's really about highlighting it's kind of showing that passion, that research. Obviously, I'm talking from a PhD perspective. I don't know how well this applies for a master's, but from a PhD perspective, it's all about kind of describing what you want to do, what your interests are, and kind of surfacing what why research interests you. An interesting thing about the statement of purpose for a lot of people is that people coming into grad school, not everyone has research experience. You'll see a lot of people just coming in with undergraduate experience. And so a statement of purpose might be kind of the defining piece of the application, because it can show professors that even though you don't have research experience behind you, you are ready for that that research. You are you're ready to start researching with someone. So I think that from that perspective, the statement of purpose is very important because it's kind of your argument for why you should be part of the PhD program.
Yeah, like, so I did the ESAP program, right? So like, this doesn't really apply to me because if you're going to a master's degree at UCLA from an undergrad at UCLA through the ESAP program, then they like pretty much straight up tell you that like you have to write a statement of purpose, but like they don't really look at it when they accept you. So yeah, yeah. So I didn't put much in mine.
Okay, I guess I can talk a little bit about this the personal statement from like a master's program perspective. I guess it's pretty much the same. I think it was pretty much the same thing as like the statements that I wrote for the PhD programs that I applied to, but maybe like I think the PhD ones like had more of an emphasis on research because that's obviously what you want to do. That's more of what you're going to be doing. But I think in general, mostly what the graduate schools are looking for is research. So a lot of my master's personal statements also talked about research that I wanted to do. The personal statement also has, I guess, is a part of it is also like, I guess, talking about like your weaknesses as an applicant and like, I guess not really justifying, but like talking a little bit about why you are prepared for grad school. And so for me, that section was particularly important because I didn't have really much of a mathematical or computer science background. So a big chunk of my personal statement was discussing what sort of things I had learned in my lab, like self-taught, to show that I was qualified, and showed like things I had, and like talked about like research that I had done to talk about like, I guess I was prepared for grad school in that respect. And I guess mostly discussing like my weaknesses as a candidate and like proving that I could be competitive at a grad school in computer science.
Thank you for your answers. Also, I think someone had a question for Akul, if you can see it.
Oh, in the chat?
Yeah.
1 second. Okay. Great. Yeah. That's a good question to ask. So before applying for a PhD, I actually had, this is something that, with research I got to get, was I had preprints. I didn't have anything published yet, particularly because we were in the process of publishing to conferences. So at the time of my PhD, I technically did not have any publications, but I did have the paper written, and they were in the process of submission. That definitely helped. I will say that. I mean, the work I'm doing right now is around some of the stuff that I was doing in graph theory, so it definitely helped kind of encourage my professor to reach out to me. I think that the question of what to become more competitive in the admissions process, that's a really tricky question, because there's a lot of stuff you can do. If you're talking now, keep in mind, this is a very unique answer to PhD programs. I don't know how much this translates to masters, but from PhD's perspective, really, you're not applying to the school, you're applying to a professor. And so when you're going to be talking in your statement of purpose, one thing you're going to be talking about is the professor that you want to work with at the school. That's kind of how schools will allocate who sees your statement of purpose, where the professors you kind of mention in your statement of purpose and in your application will be the ones reviewing your application to the program. So I think that one thing people kind of overlook is they market themselves towards the school, but they should be marketing themselves towards the professor they want to work with. And I think a lot of people get caught up in with a PhD program, or specifically for a PhD program, they get caught up with a school ranking or a school name. And I think that it doesn't really matter for a PhD program. The person who matters is your advisor, the person you want to work with, and their name matters. So you will see, like, a great example of this is for natural language processing. One of the greatest programs for natural language processing is at Johns Hopkins. It's not ranked very high in terms of computer science, but I mean, it's ranked pretty high, but it's not ranked very high as in terms of like MIT or Carnegie Mellon. But for NLP, it's one of the leading places to be. And so if you want to be more competitive in the admissions process, it's really curtailing your application. And it's something that requires effort. But if you can curtail your application so that it's specific for the place you're applying and specific for the professors you're applying to, that will really give you a leg up. And it's about marketing your experiences to the professor you want to work with, such that when they see your application and see what you've done, they've seen your statement of purpose, they see you as a great fit for the work they're going to be doing in their research. So if, for example, for me, coming to UIUC, one of the professors I wanted to work with, he is in adversarial machine learning and security. And so the way I marketed myself was, some of the research that his, some of the core research he's doing is a lot about graphs. And so I really talked about the graph theory part of my, undergraduate experience. And for someone who may not have that experience, you could talk about the classes you've taken, maybe some of the projects you've worked on, stuff you've done, internships, whatever you can do to really be specific towards the professor will help you in the long run. And I think that's something that a lot of people, when they're writing the statement of purpose, writing their applications, might overlook. They really think that they're trying to write to the school, and you're not. For a PhD program, you're writing for the professor. So if you can keep that in mind, you'll be leagues ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah, I would like to add on to what Akul said. I mentioned, I got into one PhD program in computer science, even though I had no computer science background, and a lot of that was exactly like what he said, was because that specific professor who wanted me, he did a lot of work with like embedded like biomedical devices, and so he saw that I had a biological background, and so he basically just wanted to accept me because of that. So yeah, so definitely a huge part of grad school for PhD programs is very much professor dependent. And also for, I guess, regarding competitive applications, I think also one thing we haven't talked about is just the importance of recommendation letters, especially from like, I guess like people that you've done research with, if you're doing a PhD program specifically. Yeah, having a really good relationship with your like research advisor if you've done research, or like specifically with professors that you've taken like upper division classes in undergrad, or maybe even graduate classes here, is going to go a long way with getting your foot in the door with a lot of these like professors.
Just to clarify, Travis, when you said you got to a PhD program at Northwestern, is it for computer science or immunology?
It was for computer science.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. I think there's another question in the chat. So Bonnie asks, computer science is a very broad field. Why did you each specialize in your areas, and how did you come to that decision?
So I mean, I can go from the specialization part of it at least. Computer science is a broad field, and I think that a lot of people, this is actually a big decision that anyone makes leaving school, is, are you kind of happy doing what you are doing? It is more specific towards PhD programs because, with a job, you could really transfer to another job if you don't like it. If you don't like what you're doing, you can always grab the skills you need and try to, market yourself for another position. But with a PhD program, the common belief is that you kind of are locked in. And I think that that's the great part about computer science and the great part about PhD programs is the kind of freedom you get to explore. And I think that's why PhD programs are actually more freeing than jobs, because jobs you kind of have to market yourself, you kind of have to get the skills you need to transfer over. Whereas in PhD programs, it's literally, since you're in school and you're considered free labor, a lot of professors will kind of hire you anyway, even if you don't have the skills. They'll take you under the wing. So you have kind of like the first 2 years of your PhD program to really explore different areas of computer science. I think figuring out what area you want to be in, there's a couple ways you could do it. First, obviously, is to do a research project in the area. So if you really like something to do with security, then do a project in there, and you might really find it interesting, and that could be the area you want to do your research in. But another great indicator of liking the field is the classes you're taking. Someone I know personally loves, languages. One of their passions is languages. And so his research is in NLP. When I was in an undergrad, one of the classes I was part of, the graph, algorithms class. It was an algorithms class with a focus in graph theory. I really enjoyed that class, and I really enjoyed the professor. And so I talked to the professor, and I got to start researching with him. And that was really helpful. So I think your question, I want to sort of answer in that there are different ways you can kind of figure out what to specialize in. But PhD programs are also built in a way such that when you come in, you're not trapped in what you might be doing. You have the freedom to pick another area, pick another field. And I have multitude of friends who've done that, where they've gone from machine learning to HCI, or they've gone to parallelization, to architecture. There's I've lots of examples of people who've shifted a lot in their first year, and that's sort of kind of welcome, because the school wants you to have a good PhD experience, and the professor you're researching with, they want you to like the topic you're researching, so you will stick on. So I think that the answer to why how you come to that decision of which area to specialize in, it really depends. I think it's something you should try, or something based on the classes you take. For me personally, there was a class I took, and also the professor who was I'm researching with. I really liked that guy, and so that's why I kind of started working with them, and I ended up liking it. But overall, my general advice is go and try it out. Try to find the research project, try to find an area you like, and just start researching. And that's probably how you'll find it.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about how I chose my specialization for my master's degree. It was mainly from doing internships and figuring out what kind of stuff I liked. So like I took a lot of, so I don't know, like the beginning of my undergrad, I was like kind of into like ML and AI, like a lot of other people. And then I took like a lot of, like, I guess I took a few ML classes, and then I took a bunch of like systems classes and like database classes and stuff like that. And I had my first internship, and then that was like very systems based. And then I had other internships, and those were also systems based. And I guess it was like a combination of like understanding systems well, and like also Stockholm syndrome. So like I ended up like really liking systems. So I decided to take a lot of like take mostly systems classes in my master's degree. But the thing is, like, your master's degree is like very course focused as opposed to research focused. So I guess like, yeah. So while your specialization is somewhat important for like what you personally learn, at UCLA, I don't think they really mind if you take classes kind of all over the place without like having a specific focus. And I can also talk a little bit about why or how the ESAP program works, and like how the transition kind of is from like undergrad to ESAP. So I graduated from my undergrad like at the end of fall quarter, not this year, but the year before that. And then I started doing my ESAP winter quarter. So it is possible to like finish your undergrad and then like in a quarter and start ESAP the quarter right after that. Like I finished it in fall and then I started in winter. So like there wasn't really much of a gap between. And there's this person called Juliana in the grad student department, and she's great, and she will help you do what you want. And yeah, that's pretty much the process. Just talk to Juliana a lot, and like she'll help you.
Okay, well, I guess in terms of specializing, I guess the field that I'm specializing in is pretty much computational biology. Yeah, I guess for me that was a pretty straightforward decision because I'm coming from a biological background, and what got me interested in computer science was pretty much trying to figure out how to model like an immune system's response to cancer. So it was a pretty natural fit, but in a more general perspective, the way I got there was definitely through a lot of research, like just conducting a lot of research and like reading a lot of papers on like the state of the art in the field. Like in like cancer immunology right now, it's a really big topic to be able to use like ML for like image like processing, image classification to just for early diagnosis of cancers, like analyzing ultrasounds or MRIs, and like or like just for like taking those like histology images and being able to predict a prognosis off of that. And so yeah, just being involved in the state of art of the field is, I guess, kind of how I got into the specialization that I did. But graduate school, like with the master's program, you do have to take like there is a breadth requirement, and you do have the option to take quite a few different classes. So I've taken classes all over the place, and so maybe that will change at some point. Like
quick question for Gopi. Why did you decide to do like what are the benefits of doing a master's over just graduating immediately?
So okay, so I guess like there are two things to think about here. One is that you can take more classes. So if there are classes that you didn't get a chance to take during your undergrad, or if there are like grad classes that got filled up really fast, you can take those if you do your master's degree. And like I guess like the other thing to look at is like how it affects like your salary once you graduate. And like I'm gonna say that it doesn't affect it that much, like maybe by 10, 15K. But like but like to get that bump in your salary, you're giving up like over a year of like working for after your undergrad. So you have to like weigh that in your mind. But yeah, I feel like if you're gonna do a master's degree, like I mean, okay, so if you're gonna do a master's degree and then go to work immediately afterwards, then you would mainly only do it if you really like taking classes and like learning stuff.
So is that the reason why you chose your master's? Chose doing your master's?
Yeah, so for me it was like a weird situation. So like I was saying before, okay, so yes, partly I did want to learn more, but like also I was like gonna finish college early and I wanted to stay here for 4 years. So I decided to just like stay for my master's also.
Makes sense. Also, where did you guys apply and what did you guys get into?
Yeah, I only applied to UCLA because like the ESAP program's like really streamlined, and like if I think like the exact requirements are on the website, but like if you satisfy those requirements, like you pretty much just get in, and like you don't have to take the GRE or anything, so it's very chill. So yeah, I only applied here and then I got in here.
So I applied to a couple of places. I was a little bit of a corner case in that I applied, I think, to eight schools. I want to say 8 schools, something like that, and I got into 4 of them. So 4 out of 8, which isn't terrible. So I actually fell into my own mistake that I pointed out to you guys earlier. Was I kind of applied according to ranking. I didn't apply according to professors, and so that I think ended up working against me in some cases, because some of the places I got into, the people I was working with, I was unhappy. So let me start with the places I applied. So I applied to MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, UIUC, UW-Madison, Columbia, USC, and UCLA, I think. A little while, but the places I got into, so I got into Columbia, I got into UIUC, USC, and UW-Madison, and I got a chance to interview with a professor from Stanford. So with the way that a lot of PhD programs work is since you're coming in with a professor, they're going to interview you first. It's a little bit like a job, and then they think that you're a right fit for their lab, and they'll accept you to school. So for UIUC and Stanford, I got an interview with the professor. At Columbia, I was coming in with no advisor, so I was kind of just like a I didn't really have anyone I could. There's no one who's really willing to sponsor me, and so I'd have been coming in as a TA. And at UW-Madison and USC, I got in with the professor, but the professors never talked to me. So for UW-Madison and USC specifically, the professors I got in with, I wasn't, when I went there for visit days, and this is another great part about being a PhD program, is they'll fly you out so you can actually go visit the school and kind of meet the people you will be researching with. When I got out there and I met the professors I wanted to research with, I actually wasn't very happy talking to them. Like they kind of had kind of a different personality than what I wanted in my advisors. So UIUC for me turned out to be the best fit because the professor was great, and the area he was doing was great for me, and it was a great fit all together. But yeah, I applied to a couple of schools. I got into a couple of schools, but I would say that my method of applying was not great. I think that when you are applying, you should be looking at professors and not schools. And I think that that's if anything you take away from this, panel discussion, I hope you take a lot more than this, but if you do take something away, it's really, if you're doing a PhD program, look at the professors, look at who you want to research, look at what you want to research, and go according to that. Rankings at the end of the day don't matter. They really don't. It's who you're researching with and what you're going to be publishing. And if you think that that's a school you're going to be doing that with, perfect.
Okay, so I guess I had a bit of a weird situation when it came to applying, because like I said, I had no computer science background, so I had no idea what I could possibly get into, or I might or might not get into. So I think I ended up applying to 22 different schools. You definitely should not do that because it takes a lot of time and it's very expensive. So if you have background, like narrow it down to like a top 10 at most. Yeah, but I tried to cast as wide of a net as possible because I didn't know what I could get into and what I couldn't. So yeah, I applied from everything from like Cal State Fullerton and like San Diego State University to like Berkeley and of course UCLA, Northwestern, UCSD. As for what I got into, it was basically a crapshoot. Like I got rejected by some top schools as expected. And I got rejected from some Cal States, like Cal State Fullerton or Cal State Long Beach, and I have no idea why. And I also somehow got into UCLA and Northwestern. It's admissions is just really crazy sometimes. It really sometimes just depends on like what the professor that like what the people you talk to, what they're looking for essentially. If a professor likes you, they'll pick you out of the pile pretty much, and you'll get it. And if they don't care, then you might not get it.
Oh, remember that if you guys have questions, you can say in the chat. Also, for Travis, did you apply to PhDs and masters like concurrently, or like for the schools that you apply PhDs, you also apply masters, or how does it work?
So I applied for master's programs at pretty much everywhere except for Northwestern. And for Northwestern, I only applied for the PhD because their admissions portal was a little different, where they let you, if you get rejected from a PhD there, they will automatically consider you for a second choice PhD. And then after that second choice PhD, then they'll consider you for the master's program of your first choice PhD. So for me, when I applied to Northwestern, I just figured I'm going to get rejected from the PhD anyway. So it's the same thing as getting considered for the master's. So I just did it for I don't know, just for funsies. And yeah, I somehow got it. Yeah, so like I applied for like the computer science PhD as my first choice, the biomedical engineering PhD as my second choice, and so obviously the master's was the third choice. Yeah, but everywhere else I applied as master's. At USC, I did get an email from an admissions officer saying that I could change my application from a master's to a PhD if I wanted to, because that's what my research background seemed to fit that better. But yeah, I think that was more of a unique case.
Thank you, Travis. I think for Gopi, you have the question about whether it's easy to ask for recommendations from CS professors if you don't have like research experience or like you've never been to office hours.
Yeah, it's like super easy. So you just email the professor saying that you want a letter of recommendation, and then like if they respond to you, great. And like if they don't respond to you, then like after you email them, you just go to their office hours, and then you like ask them to fill out the form or something, and like you're good. They're like, because you're doing it for ESAP, they're aware that like their letter of recommendation doesn't need to be very long, so they're almost always willing to write the letter of recommendation. You don't need to know them.
Also, going off of recommendation letters, who wrote your recommendation letters and what was your relationship with them? And if you guys have any advice about that.
Okay. So I think my recommendation letters, you generally need about 3. And so 2 of them were from 2 of the professors I was researching with. And I came from I got into research pretty early as an undergrad. So I actually was able to call on a third professor who I had briefly researched with during my freshman year. He probably was my weakest recommendation letter in terms of knowing me, because I didn't research with him for a long time. I researched for him maybe 3-4 months. But I think for letter of recommendation, there's really, from what I've heard, just kind of 2 criterias. They want professors you've worked with so they can talk about your caliber of like what kind of researcher you are. And so if you can get a professor who really heavily endorses you as a good researcher, that works really well for your favor. But there are people who don't have the research experience, who haven't researched during undergrad. And so for them, there's only, 2 different ways you can, well, I think there's one way really that you can get what you need for a letter of recommendations. I think it's going to the classes that you had the best connection with your professors with and asking them to write you a letter of rec. And I think when you go and ask a professor, personally, when I did it, I emailed them and then I went and talked in person with them, because it's something that you kind of need to kind of explain in person. So you go during office hours or go during end of class, whatever you can, talk to the professor face to face and, you know, kind of make that mental connection, because for a professor, they have a billion things going on. And so if your email is lost in the massive amounts of emails they're getting from students and, you know, grants and their own researchers, it's not going to get done. So I think if you like the professor, you think they like you, and they're a field, I mean, it doesn't have to be that the field you're going in, the professor that's writing the letter of rec has to be in that same field, but it would be better. But if all those cases match where, you know, they like you, you like them, and you think they'll write you a good letter of rec, then I think that's the perfect place to go. There also is kind of the seniority thing where if a more distinguished, well-established person is writing you a letter of rec, it's weighted more heavily than if an associate professor is writing you a letter of rec. However, there also is that criteria where if you are getting a better just overall letter of rec, like the associate professor is writing you outstanding remarks versus like the distinguished lecturer or distinguished researcher or professor is writing you, you know, kind of like a cookie cutter letter of rec, you obviously want to go for the better letter of rec, one that, you know, really speaks highly of you. So there's a lot of things to consider, but mainly you want to consider the professors who write you the best letter of rec, and try to consider professors. Don't consider like lecturers or researchers, because professors are just held at higher regards in general than lecturers or researchers.
Cool. I guess like for ESAP, I asked Professor Eggert and Professor Paulsberg for letters of rec, and they were willing to write me letters of rec for ESAP. But like, you know, as far as the letters of rec for ESAP go, they're not very long, so it wasn't much of a commitment for them. So yeah, like I said before, for ESAP, it's typically not that much effort, and those professors should be down to write you a letter of rec.
For my grad school application, I had a letter of rec from the PI that I was working with at the time, and I think that's kind of important because one, usually like PIs have kind of a more distinguished title than a lot of than other people that would write your letter of rec. Like Akul was saying, like you probably want at least a professor level, not like a staff scientist or like a lecturer or something. It has to be at least, it should at least be a professor level, and preferably someone you have worked with so they can speak about your credibility as a researcher essentially. And I also had another letter of rec from another professor that I worked with. For me, I tried to look for, because I was trying to make a compelling case for, even though I come from a biological background, I have the skills to succeed in a computer science program. So I looked for people who had more quantitative work. So I had a good relationship with and worked with a professor in the informatics department at City of Hope. So I asked him to write me a letter of rec because that was a general, I guess, theme that I wanted to convey in my application. But you usually need like 3. So for the other ones, I asked like some professors that I took upper division undergraduate classes with, and yeah, I think they, if you don't have like people that you're researching with, like, okay, so like I guess the priority list should go like your PI that you're researching with, and then underneath that other professors that you've worked with and have a good relationship with, and then underneath that you would probably want professors that you've taken upper division undergraduate classes with, as opposed to lower division, because obviously the knowledge you need and the skills that you learn in an upper division undergraduate class, they're more closely related to, I guess, to what you would be doing as a researcher than lower division class. Yeah, and also I guess when you're asking for the rec letter, it helps a lot to be very well prepared. Like when I asked for my recommendation letters, I wrote like a draft of my personal statements, and I had my CV, and I had like just the list of schools and like on deadlines and stuff that the professors would need to submit everything. And I just kind of packaged it up into like a vanilla envelope and gave it to them so they would have everything they needed. And the recommendation letters would be consistent with what I was with the theme I was trying to convey in my application.
Does anyone have any last questions? We'll probably be taking like one last question before some of our panelists need to leave. Okay, so I guess I will pose another question. So have you guys been in the position where like you don't know who to ask for a letter of rec? And if you have, what did you do? Like, who did you ask? I guess for Gopi, you asked your professors, but Travis and Nicole, have you asked like someone you don't know very well or have worked with?
So straight off the bat, I think that if you don't know your professors at all very well, which I'm sure there are it's a good chunk of people actually might be out there who, haven't interacted with their professors because they don't need to, or, it's just hard to with a school like UCLA, which has a lot of people in it. I mean, most UCs are like that. In that case, I think there's generally for grad school, for PhD programs, professors are looked up to in terms of like weightage on recommendation letters as the highest. But if you don't know professors and you don't think they're going to write you a great letter of rec, then the next best thing is someone who holds a good position, like a manager or a PI, who can write you, who knows you well, who can write you a great letter of rec. Your letters of rec have to be something that will describe you very well. If they're not, it's not going to look well for you at all, because the fact that you have no one who's writing a great letter of rec does not look favorably to the professor who's reading them. If they're seeing something about you that's very generic, like he does well in my class and he gets an A, or he has this, he's very good at he's great at making friends, or something very generic like that, you're not going to get very far. And so a lot of people, if they're in a situation like that where they don't have anyone who's going to write them a good letter of rec, what will happen is they will apply, they'll ask, for the generic letters of rec, and they might or might not get into grad schools. But in case they're not happy with their grad school, the places they've gone into, then you can go and work and build up some rapport with your manager, or your, you can do some side research while working. And that way you can start building relationships that, maybe not the year after you graduate, but the year after that, you can start applying to grad schools with more stronger letters of rec. Because if you can't get a good letter of rec, as terrible as it is, you're not going to get into the schools you want. You're not going to get with the professors you want, because professors really do look upon letters of recs as a good estimate of your character. And professors are most highly regarded because they are they, in some sense, it's like almost like professors are recommending students to their colleagues. So making that recommendation does carry a lot of weight, because professors, I've known professors who have said no to students because, for them, making that recommendation to another colleague does not make any sense because they know the student very well. So if you're getting a recommendation from a professor and it is a good one, that carries a lot of weight. If you can't get something like that, and you can't get a great one from a manager, wait a year. I mean, I would say apply to schools, but if you don't be discouraged if you don't get into the schools you want. Apply again the following year. And in the year that you're kind of just like the year before applying, just get some good work with a professor. That'd be my recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I think admissions to graduate programs is a little bit of a crapshoot, and if you don't have strong letters of rec, it doesn't get any better from there. I don't think I really had a situation where I didn't know who I was going to ask for letters of rec, because I knew that in my application I needed to convey that I had quantitative skills that would translate to computer science. And I was always going to ask my PI, because I think if you're working in a research lab and you don't get a letter of recommendation from your PI, it does look kind of funny for like for when you know, like when the person reading is going to be another professor that you might be trying to work with, and he's like, it will be like, why isn't the person that is funding you and you're working with closely supposedly not writing your letter of rec? So yeah, so that wasn't ever a question. And I guess I went to a small school, like Claremont McKenna is a pretty small school, so I had a really good opportunity to like know my professors very well, and I knew which ones could speak well for my work. And yeah, so it was not too difficult for me to figure out who to ask. Yeah, but if you are having difficulty, yeah, I would say definitely, yeah, wait a year, get some more experience, and yeah, working in like, if you can work in a research lab, that should help way more, because it's more time you get to spend with a professor, and more time you get to prove yourself and have something unique that's not just simple cookie cutter stuff that will be on your letter of recommendation, and that'll definitely make a huge difference on your application.
Akul, I know you need to go, so if you need to go, thank you so much for being a panelist.
Thank you, guys.
Also, there's another question in the chat where this person asked how UCLA grad school is compared to undergrad in both academic and extra activities.
I can talk about this. So yeah, I guess like as far as extracurricular activities go, there's like a grad student association that's pretty chill. Like I haven't like actually gone to any of their events, but like I keep getting the emails and like they seem fun. They have like board game nights like with alcohol. Like I don't know, like yeah, I haven't gone. Like it seems interesting. As far as classes go, there are basically two main types of classes, right? There are classes that are like very research and paper based, and there are classes that are like pretty much the exact same as undergrad classes, where like there's a professor and then like they talk to you for a while and then you do homework every week. So I guess the paper based classes sort of are very different from what you see in your undergrad, because there is not that much homework, in the sense that like essentially what you do every single lecture is just like read a paper like the night before, and then you discuss it, but like there's no problems you have to do or anything. And then at the end of the quarter you like submit some project that you pretty much choose for yourself, so there's like no real structure to it. So like those classes are really, I guess, like geared more towards people who are doing their PhDs, but they're definitely open to people doing their master's degree. And I honestly felt like I learned the most from those types of classes, because like discussing a paper like for 2 whole hours like really helps you like understand what the paper says, and like it helps you understand the material. So yeah, I'd say like look out for those. But like honestly, like if you're doing your master's here, I think the requirements are that you have to do 5 grad classes and 4 undergrad classes. So like about half of your master's degree will be identical to your undergrad.
I think grad school life compared to undergrad, well, I guess I think, yeah, the structure of the classes so far has been, I guess, pretty different. Like there's a lot more emphasis like on research projects, and I guess if there's like some very annoyingly difficult classes which have both homework, midterm finals, and a research project, those are probably the most the most annoying classes in terms of workload. In terms of extracurricular activities, I think in grad school, my impression is that people don't care as much about clubs, but like, cause like we have to do like a capstone project or a thesis, like people are a lot more interested in getting involved in research. I think that's the main difference in terms of extracurricular activities that I can tell.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I think it's 7, so maybe we should wrap it up. I guess there's no more questions. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining us and like helping us make this possible. And then thank you all the participants for being here.